Photographing history. Dorothea Lange was born in 1895 in New Jersey. However, her story really begins at the age of 19 when she received her first camera. She had been working for a photographer and he gave her a camera. That gift sparked her interest in learning more about photography, and as a result, she decided to study photography at Columbia University. After she completed her education, she traveled for a while before settling in San Francisco. There she opened her own photography studio. When the Great Depression began, Lange started to photograph people throughout San Francisco's neighborhoods. Some were homeless or hungry, and many had no jobs. A number of people were taking part in labor strikes. She did not like what she saw in the streets. Her images of people standing in lines waiting for bread or eating in soup kitchens showed the awful conditions people had to live through. Lange wanted to tell a story with each picture she took. For example, she saw a man standing in a bread line holding a tin cup. His back was turned away from the other people in line. His face was thin and worn. He had the look of someone who had given up all hope. Lange snapped at that image. Photographers of her era saw this photograph and many others Lange had taken. Because of this, she became known for her ability to see into the hearts and minds of her subjects. Lange showed not only the horrible outside living conditions, but also the inside struggles of the people. This was the start of her career as documentary photographer. Real images, real stories. Lange's fame had spread to people in the government. Because of this, she and her husband were asked to work for the Farm Security Administration, FSF. This was one of the programs created by President Roosevelt's New Deal. Lange photographed victims of the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression. Lange's husband wrote reports about their experiences. Due to the drought and dust storms on the Great Plains, thousands of farm families had been forced to move west looking for work. They became migrant workers. Many ended up in California. However, California already had a large population of migrant workers. These people lived in rundown shacks or torn tents. They had little food or water or other necessary services. Unfortunately, conditions did not improve for those fleeing the Dust Bowl states of California. Lange began photographing people living in these conditions. Before she took a picture, she talked to each subject because she wanted the person to be comfortable with her. With many of her photos, she included captions. Sometimes Lange wrote essays about the images she captured on camera. Her work and the work of some others helped the government realize how bad things were for migrant workers. As a result, the government provided money for California to build migrant camps for these people. Lange continued her work, photographing people and telling their stories. She focused on the people she believed were forgotten. Her goal became making the public aware of their troubles. Her photographs appeared in magazines and newspapers. They helped raise awareness about migrant workers. In 1936, Lange saw a woman sitting with her children in the middle of a deserted field. They were in a worn tent with no food or supplies. Lange took a series of photographs of this woman and her children. The woman, hungry and with no means of support, had been forced from her home in the Dust Bowl state. People were troubled by what they saw in Lange's photographs. This caused the government to send 20,000 pounds of food to the camp where the migrant mother was staying. Another effect was that writers and other photographers began to pay more attention to the suffering of these people and others throughout the country. Dorothea Lange, together with many other photographers hired by the FSA created a historical portrait of the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression. About 270,000 pictures were taken. Many of these pictures can still be seen today at the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. This photograph, known as Migrant Mother, was taken in 1936 in Nipomo, California. Number 1. What is the best reason why the author chose to begin the text with Dorothea Lange's background? A. To demonstrate how Dorothea Lange became passionate about photography. B. To highlight her education as a photographer. C. To inform the reader about Dorothea Lange's famous photographs and her work in the government. D. To convince the reader that Dorothea Lange was an American. Number 2. Read paragraph 3. Lange wanted to tell a story with each picture she took. For example, she saw a man standing in a bread line holding a tin cup. His back was turned away from the other people in line. His face was thin and worn. He had the look of someone who had given up all hope. Lange snapped that image. How does this paragraph about Dorothea Lange's intention behind her photographs affect the central idea of this passage? A. This paragraph tells us why she only chose one subject to photograph in her entire career. The choice of one subject was an important factor in her success as a photographer. B. This photograph shows why Dorothea began taking photographs that ultimately made the public aware of the issues in the country. C. This paragraph compares her intention of taking pictures that is different from her husband's. D. This paragraph informs the reader how the photographs are stored at the Library of Congress. Number 3. The author included a picture captured by Dorothea Lange at the end of the passage. What is the most likely reason the author included the picture? A. To introduce a woman who grew up in Nipomo, California. B. To contrast Dorothea Lange's work with another photograph taken by a random photographer in 1936. C. To illustrate one of the many powerful photographs taken by Lange, which is described in paragraph 9. D. To summarize the central idea of the passage. Number 4. Reread the sentence from the passage. She focused on the people she believed were forgotten. Which of these best describes why the author used this sentence in the passage? Choose 2. A. To show how Dorothea Lange continued to tell the stories of the most vulnerable population. B. To demonstrate how Lange's work helped raise awareness about forgotten migrant workers. C. To inform how Lange saw a woman sitting with her children. D. To convince the reader that Lange and her husband deserved to work for the Farm Security Administration, FSA, although they never worked with the government. E. To tell the reader that Lange collaborated with other photographers.